This episode of CFO Thought Leader is made possible by Planful and Avalara.
Hi, it's Tony Bohr, CFO of Blackbaud, and you're listening to the CFO Thought Leader podcast.
This is episode 1036.
What I love about finance, especially in this age and time, is the opportunity for CFOs to be strategic, to think about how we grow companies, and what do we use, whether it's systems, people, and tools to use to really drive value for the company. So, in many respects, I was really fortunate, and it's in a sector I'm now comfortable with. Being technology and software in particular. So identifying some of those opportunities and some of our growth areas that I saw for Workday are similar to areas that I've seen not only in my airline world, but also in with VMware and EMC and a lot of global companies, that opportunity to extend what we do globally and to really drive change for our customers and do that around the world.
Hi, it's Jack with an on-location episode. This past week, we attended Workday Rising, the annual customer conference for cloud software developer Workday. And we were pleased to catch up with Workday CFO, Zane Rowe. In 2012, after nearly 2 decades in the airline industry, Zane Rowe made a bold career pivot. Leaving behind his role as CFO at United Airlines, Rowe stepped into the tech world, joining Apple in a sales role, a move many saw as risky, but one that would serve him well as he advanced into a succession of tech CFO roles, where data optimization and the pursuit of deeper insights underpin his tenure as a CFO for the digital age. You'll hear Zane's story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report more accurately? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR. All with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks and with minimal IT involvement, so you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business on your key financial progress. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unparalleled scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com/CFO Thought Leader to see how you can reach peak financial performance with Planful. Hello, we're speaking with Zane Rowe, CFO of Workday, and we're at Workday Rising. Zane, thanks for making time for us.
Well, thank you, Jack. Thrilled to be here. Heard a lot about your podcast and feel quite honored to be a small part of it. So thank you very much.
Well, Zane, I'm afraid we're going to have you go back to the beginning, which is where we always like to begin with finance leaders and try to understand better how they built their careers. Can you take a look back for us?
Sure.
And share where things began.
It's been a long time, so happy to do that.
I should sort of tip your hand a little bit. For those who might know, Zane Rowe has had 6 CFO career chapters, but the first 20 years of his career roughly was spent with the airlines industry. He broke off and has had a dozen years in tech, where he's had 4 CFO tours of duty. Again, 2 were in the airlines, 4 in the tech industry, Workday being the latest. How'd I do? Is that?
I think you did well. I think you may have it down better than I would. I'd probably get half of those numbers wrong, so I appreciate that.
But it began way back when, where you got very focused on the aeronautic world. Can you share with us who was that young person? What were you thinking?
Yeah, I think for me, first off, I grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, so part of it was the allure of being able to fly to other countries in the world, and I love global business, and I love And I think it's the finance part of me where sort of something that's capital intensive, that, requires a lot of sort of dynamic thinking and yet strategic thinking. And it was an industry that I was just fascinated by at a very young age. And I love that combination just with business and then finance in general. And I think that's what got it started.
It was always aeronautics and the business side as well. It wasn't like you went off and wanted to fly.
No, that's right.
It was a fascination with how these
giant aircrafts that would land actually circled the globe, and that the industry that propelled them had to be in every geography and impact every economy.
Yeah, no, that's a good part of it. It was sort of a balance between, I love the idea of flight, and you have these enormous aircraft that weigh thousands and thousands of tons that essentially fly around the globe. It was a combination of that and just the engineering element of being able to be up in the air and travel to different places was part of it. And then just aligning that with business, I had the good fortune of having a number of people that did fly. Candidly, early in my career, I couldn't afford to do any of the flying, so I enjoyed just being with others up there. And then just wanted that to be part of the business. And I was very open to different elements of whether it was sort of the airline side of things, airports, and just ultimately ended up in the airline space, at least for the first part of my career.
So how does that happen? You enter, what's your first finance role? Where do you step in the door?
Yeah, so I actually started in an area called revenue management. So I was teaching economics back at my alma mater, and there was literally one job opening at an airline called Continental Airlines, which ultimately merged with United. And they had recently come out of bankruptcy. They were ranked worst of all airlines, and I thought, well, why not? What can go wrong? And that was pretty much the start of it. And that was looking at the business as you think about demand, you think about pricing, and I love the algorithms that went into optimizing revenue for the airline. And that was a big part of my start into the airlines, and a lot of different roles, obviously, after that.
Yeah, I'm just going to read off some of the titles. It seems like somewhat of a traditional finance path, perhaps, but from the early 90s on forward, senior finance analyst, manager business development and analysis, senior director financial planning analysis, staff vice president, financial planning and analysis. You're climbing the ranks. Did you broaden yourself here? I see something senior vice president, network strategy. You become a little more strategic, or what?
Yeah, so it was an interesting story. Part of the airlines, as you said, maybe more traditional early, although I had a lot of sort of interesting, sort of paths to navigate even getting to that point. And then the person who was in charge of the network planning part of the business, which is everywhere from how you think about strategy for airlines, what aircraft you're going to buy, where you're going to fly, and sort of lining that up all the way into publishing schedules that go sort of 3 days out to a year out, essentially. And that individual at Continental Airlines left, and I got a call that afternoon with our CEO, I believe at the time, said, hey, we would love for you to think about this opportunity. And that time I knew, I wanted to be a CFO. And I'd sort of, I thought I would be the CFO at Continental. And I thought, well, wait a minute, why would I now go in a completely different direction when, what I wanted to do was something else? And part of it was it's a job they have to have filled. And the other part was they literally had to escort the individual out of the building because he was going to a competitor. So the next day they had a town hall and said, oh, and by the way, if you accept the role, we need you in a town hall in the morning to talk about how great and where you want to take the airline. So I had a number of calls through the evening into the morning, and I was convinced early the next morning that this would be the next great opportunity for me. So that's what I did.
Did you distinguish yourself early on as somebody who could present, as someone who could tell the story fairly well? I mean, do you remember being distinguished in that way?
I think at the time, when you're in a company that was challenged, right? We just came out of bankruptcy. Airlines in general, it's a difficult business. Even when times are good, it's a challenging business. I got thrown into a lot of different parts of that business, and we were looking at things like M&A. We were looking at all kinds of different things. So I just raised my hand and jumped into whatever was out there. And I was really, really fortunate to have some great mentorship when I was sort of, early in my career, with people that just kept challenging me and put me in front of the board and allowed me to, sort of progress in that respect. And I think they just thought, given my background, which even at that time was somewhat diverse, they thought, look, we'll give this person an opportunity. And candidly, I don't think they had anybody else right there and then ready to just wave their hand and go, sure, I'll give it a shot.
Did you raise your hand at times too? I mean, were there certain roles that seemed to be out of reach, and you had to sort of work your way over to get the nod?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think even post my CFO roles at the airlines, I raised my hand and decided to take on a sales job, which a lot of people thought I was absolutely crazy doing. And I thought I had conviction early on, and then I thought, well, maybe I am crazy because everybody else said I was.
I think you're referring to your stint at Apple. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I did want to touch on that, even though often this first part we just talk about you getting to the CFO role, and of course you did at Continental, and then I guess it's acquired by United, and you're CFO of United for a number of years. Somewhere along the line you said, okay, enough with airlines. I need a door of entry into tech, and is that what this was, where you joined Apple in a sales
so it was so exciting. Part of airlines, I recognized early on the power of data and the power technology had in differentiating a good airline from a bad airline. And it was really, we were just sort of with the web sort of, becoming a bigger and bigger part of it, and technology and data becoming a bigger part of running anything. Airlines had the opportunity to take advantage of that. And at one point, I had the CIO reporting to me at Continental, and I thought, wow, this is really, really interesting stuff. And then, of course, at the time, Apple was and still is just a juggernaut out there, and I had an opportunity to talk to Tim and talk to others at the company, and I thought, wow, what an incredible company and an incredible opportunity. Originally, it wasn't a sales role that they were talking to me about, but it ultimately came to be a sales role. And I just thought, once again, look, this is maybe a little bit crazy, but just a great opportunity to flex whatever I can and to learn a new business, a new industry, new people.
How do you do that, though? Is there a recruiter involved in that? Was he fired? I mean, what was it? No, I mean, how do you? Was it your network? I mean,
No, it was a recruiter. It was originally more of a finance type role, and then ultimately, I just really enjoyed the people at Apple and the company, and spent many times traveling to the West Coast, talking to Tim and team about the opportunity, and happened to be a cold winter in Chicago and a beautiful day in Palo Alto, so that probably helps. But no, it was a great opportunity. I embraced it and learned a lot from it. I mean, Apple's just such an amazing company, to learn from.
Well, that's just a great path for us. Thank you for getting us to the CFO role. And I'll just mention that you step into a CFO role in short order after Apple. You're at EMC for a number of years, and on to a number of different VMware, where you were 7 years, your longest tenure, I would believe. Yeah. So we'll come back. We might have a few more I know we're going to have some more career-related questions for you. But right now, let's find out about Workday. Everyone, it's a company, cloud software, helps companies manage human capital, finances, operations. But really, what sets it apart? Tell us about Workday.
Yeah, I think I'm going to maybe use all your words, because I think you just nailed it. No, it's an incredible company. It's so well known in the Bay Area. I thought if there was ever a company to move to from my role at VMware, something like a Workday would be that. I mean, we're so privileged, and you're here at Rising, and hopefully you can get out of the room we're in at some point to actually appreciate that and enjoy that with 17,000+ of our customers here in person, and so many of our partners here as well. And it's really an ecosystem of opportunity in the areas you mentioned, both in human capital management as well as in financials, and what we're able to leverage with our platform. Everyone's talking about AI now, but if you think about ultimately, through my life, it's been about data and data sets and thinking about how to grow those. And what we're able to do with our platform and being cloud enabled from day one is leverage that data and all those billions and billions and billions of transactions that we have every year, and allow our customers to grow in these two really important areas. The most important areas for any company, obviously the people and then the financials. So we're very privileged to be where we are, to be embraced by our customers and prospective customers, and just an exciting time to be here and to be growing with the company.
So you arrived in June of 2023,
right?
So more than a year ago now, into your tenure here. You arrived inside the CFO office several times now in different companies, and both tech and airline, as I described. How was your arrival at Workday? And it's a two-part question. I want to know, how was it similar, and what was different about it when you looked around and you immediately started making a sort of a checklist in your back of your head? What to do?
No, I think again, what I love about finance, especially in this age and time, is the opportunity for CFOs to be strategic, to think about how we grow companies, and what do we use, whether it's systems, people, and tools to use to really drive value for the company. So in many respects, I was really fortunate, and it's in a sector I'm now comfortable with, being technology and software in particular. So identifying some of those opportunities, and some of our growth areas that I saw for Workday are similar to areas that I've seen not only in my airline world, but also in with VMware and EMC and a lot of global companies, that opportunity to extend what we do globally and to really drive change for our customers and do that around the world. And those were some of the elements when I talked to Carl about joining the company that he had the same affinity for, how we think about leveraging AI, our partners, and think about growing around the world. And that was what excited me. So there are a lot of similarities there. I've been in this position before, if you will, as far as thinking about that opportunity set at the company level, and that was also very interesting for me.
We do want to touch on AI with you, and we have several questions. They might overlap in some way, but looking ahead, really, what excites you the most about the potential of AI as it relates to finance?
Right. I don't need the pause there.
Some drama.
No, I think there really is such a great opportunity for not just CFOs, but anyone at the company, and finance in particular, to leverage rich data and to really think about how companies can grow value for their customers, how to leverage technology, how to become more efficient, how to look at differentiating elements within your company, and how to pull all that together. Much like early on in my career at the airline side, we developed a profitability model that allowed us to actually, we thought, better identify the profitability of flights, which wasn't that intuitive. You think about it, every airline's, planes always seem like they're full when you're on it, but it's really digging into that data and getting good insight from that and driving value from that we thought was a differentiator for us. So for me, AI is just the next step of that. And how do you make things more intuitive? How do you, from a value creation perspective, look ahead? How do you plan better? How do you think about opportunities at the company, driving change? And then even from the financial side, how do I make sure the data is accurate? How do we look at AI in a responsible way and do things in a thoughtful manner that not only preserve value, but also create value? And that's a big part of what Workday does, and a big part of what I'm excited about as far as what we can do in finance.
What you just put forth there, where are you? Is there a roadmap for you as to how to tell that story more effectively at first? Because you're kind of awakening everyone to the notion that we're going to be doing things a little deeper. We're going to dive into the data more. We're going to understand it more quickly. I don't know, but I mean,
fortunately, because we're in the business, there are two elements to this. There's first off being excited about the opportunity set, and as I talk to other CFOs in the business, it's really all CFOs having this chance to think about process change and having this opportunity to use the data they have. So it's not something just unique to Workday necessarily, but what also helps us is we actually provide the tools within our product. So I think about it as far as being close to our product teams, working with them to really think about how do we evolve our tools in a way that people, users of our financials as well as our HCM product, can really leverage AI. And you'll hear a lot more about that over the next two or so days on how we're seeing our customers use it and how we're evolving and growing AI. We've actually been doing it at the company for over 10 years, so it's become a big part of what we are. And now with Gen AI and with a lot more dialogue around it, we're able to leverage that with our customers and help them out. So there's a big part of that. And then the other part is just in finance in general. Everyone has their unique opportunity as a CFO or otherwise just in finance to really think about how do we now apply AI in our own ways, in our own processes, and really think about change there. And I think it's interesting because AI, as much as it's fascinating itself, it's really brought the idea of change to the table once more, right? If you thought about it just years ago, you'd say, hey, I have this great idea about changing a process or a system, and everyone would yawn. But now it's like, well, but we can do it with AI, and everyone jumps up and goes, oh, then what do we do and how do we do it? Because it's such an accelerant, and you're able to do it so much faster than ever before. I think it's become a big part of that opportunity.
From a CFO's perspective, how do you see AI impacting financial planning?
I mean, first it starts with data and the ability to ingest so much more data than ever before, to think about elements that are otherwise outside of your control, and think about how you ingest all that, and then how you use AI and its capabilities to come up with better forecasts and just generally better data, and then the tools to do that, make them more user-friendly and allow more people to have that sort of engagement with your planning model, and really understand what's beyond that horizon, what are the pieces in there that you can control, and how can we optimize looking forward, whether it's, if you're in the business of putting people in different places, you can look at the weather dynamics, you can look at other seasonal elements that would otherwise help you plan better and help you really facilitate demand better, and really think about the planning process of the finance role in a far more capable way because you're able to take on more data and really think about things in new and creative ways.
I wanted to touch on FP&A with you somewhat, understand better if you have sort of an FP&A model that you've used, how you organize your people, the types of responsibilities you give them, how you manage them. Is it different from one company to the next? Or
yeah, I think it's a mindset and approach. I love the idea of the team at FP&A, and it's obviously one that I'm very close to and always have been throughout my career, being engaged with their partners. And you think about all of our roles have stakeholders that we're engaged with, and a great FP&A department is engaged with the people that they connect with and that they interface with and interact with. And it's really how you evolve that, and having good systems is a part of that, but having great people is still the key fundamental driver of, I think, having a good FP&A team. I'm really fortunate to be surrounded by and have had the benefit over the years of just having tremendous people in FP&A to help drive those thoughts, that analysis, to question different elements, to question different inputs, and to look around the corner and really say, hey, have we thought about this, or what about that, and really go deep into the organization to better understand what's happening in the business, what's changing in the business, and why one forecast would look different from another. So it's an exciting field for sure.
You have several senior members, maybe your vice president of FP&A, I don't know all the titles, are having a meeting down the hall, and Zane swings open the door. What are they thinking Zane's about to ask them about?
They're probably wondering well, it depends what time of the day it is. Maybe thinking if they've got lunch there, maybe they're for a meal. No, I think they're usually just interested to hear, what I'm thinking about, or what's changed in, something that they've got to do, or some way to think about something coming up that they otherwise aren't necessarily ready for. But I think most of the time it's around, if they're expecting me, it's around, hey, have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? And, I'm very inquisitive, and that's just the nature of the business and the nature of the role. And that would be the first group that I would start engaging with if there are questions I have, depending on what's coming up.
Is there a number or a metric that you have sought to educate the organization differently about, more broadly about, more specifically about, whether it's a part of the organization, the entire organization? It could be a non-financial metric. It could be something that finance in the past didn't think it was part of its realm, and you're saying, no, it is. Here's why.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think there's any one particular number, but what I'm known for is probably just asking a lot of questions and going into, different areas and really thinking about what are the key drivers to ultimately affect change. And whether it's a financial forecast, how are we thinking about the economy, how are we thinking about our pipeline, going into those elements. And, one thing I'll say, where we are at Workday, we're so focused on customer satisfaction. And ultimately, that's such a big driver of our success, and understanding what are our customers using, where are they happy, where would they still like some changes, and driving that into thinking about the pipeline and having metrics around that. So it's really just establishing a wide variety of metrics that we can lean in on at any time to better understand what are some of the trends that we otherwise wouldn't observe just looking at a financial forecast. Because ultimately, a financial forecast is just a matter of whatever goes in, gets digested and then ultimately produces a forecast. But for me, it's some of the engagement around people to really understand what's behind that number, and why did we get that, or why did we change that, and just asking lots of questions to potentially drive a different decision or different behavior, and not just assuming the number is the number. Too many times I think we get fixated on, hey, this is what the forecast shows, let's just do that. And it's like, well, no, there's usually a lot more behind that. And how do we, as a management team, how do we bring this all in and really think about what those variables are that we can either affect or otherwise dynamically change our business model around?
Zane, we always like to ask for what we refer to as a finance strategic moment, where we're just looking for one moment. And I know you've already had several of these already today, but one moment of strategic insight during the course of your career because of your lines of sight, because you could see opportunities and risks with your lines of sight into the business. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
I think there have probably been a few, but I think the one that I think was always interesting for me is when we realized that, back in the airlines, I mentioned it earlier, all these aircraft were running full and yet we were losing money. And we had to come up with some other way of looking at the business and changing something. And that's where my affinity for really understanding data, which ultimately was interesting because back then EMC had a product that allowed us the capacity to actually do the work we wanted to do. They were one of the few companies, which is why I had that first interaction with EMC and ended up working for them, which was sort of ironic. But that was that opportunity where we recognized, and I don't think it's ever just a CFO, it's a management team that you're around and the people that you work with that can help you with things like this. So I never think there's just that one time where any individual comes up with something. It's really people you're with. But it was really thinking through, okay, how do we get better at looking at data, understanding what's happening behind the data, and then really figuring out what's making money and what's not making money. And even as I think about that sort of that view, you bring it today, and for a lot of our companies, we do a lot of different things, even in the software world. We've got different modules we sell, and we think about things more functionally than we do from a business unit perspective. But to get better insight, you always have to ask, okay, then where are we spending our money? And is the value of adding another resource here better than there? And how do we think about returns? And when you talk to investors, they're looking at you as a stock market in their portfolio that they think about moving around. If I like what you're saying, I'm going to buy more of that. Or if I don't, I'm going to move and adjust your portfolio. So how do you take that portfolio approach to financial decisions and really getting down to have meaningful data and meaningful articulation around that? And that's not only interesting and intriguing, but I think for every company, it's like, okay, what do we look at here in a different way that can actually help us make a different decision or better decision?
This episode is presented by Avalara. That's the sound of not worrying about sales tax compliance. Because when you automate it with Avalara, you don't have to worry about collecting sales tax or tracking who and what is tax exempt. With Avalara, you don't even have to worry about new tax laws and regulations. Avalara does it for you. If your business sells internationally, Avalara has you covered with cross-border tax compliance solutions. And when it comes time to file tax returns, Avalara automatically takes care of that too, giving you one less thing to worry about. Avalara has managed billions of sales for small, mid-size, and enterprise businesses, and seamlessly works with your current sales, e-commerce, and accounting platforms. Take the worry out of tax compliance with Avalara. Learn more at avalara.com. That's AVALARA.com.
We're going to jump to what we refer to as our mentoring round. And here again, we're going to ask you to look back. What we're really interested in is when you first stepped in to a CFO role for the first time, that first 30 to 60 days. Again, there was so much you thought you knew about the role. You had observed CFOs up close. You understood all of the responsibilities. There had to be something, though. If you could go back in time and just give yourself this piece of advice. What is it that you would tell yourself back then? There was something you wish someone had told you. Shaking your head.
Buy the Mag 7. No, I think, look, I was really, the lesson I've always appreciated and enjoyed was one around your personal board of directors and really think about who are those people that you would ask for advice or help even when you get uncomfortable doing that. Who are those people that would be around that table for no matter where you are, what chapter you're on in your life or your career? And I was fortunate early on to just have tremendous people. So I worked for somebody I truly admired who happened to have been a CFO before, which was helpful, but also added an extra level of sort of stress to the position because you knew that person already knew how to do your job better than you did. So, but I think it's around networking and asking questions, as you mentioned. If there was anything that I would do more of, and I feel like I'm part of a group and broader group now, but you should never stop having that flexibility and having that muscle to ask people for advice and talk to peers about what they're thinking and what they're doing. It's so much easier to compare your situation to others. And as CFOs, we don't probably do it as much as other types of executives. And I think it's an opportunity for all of us to do more of that. And then also, to balance that, it's understanding your business and talking to, again, a wide variety of stakeholders to get different perspectives. And a lot of what I think has enriched my life in this role are the positions I've had that have been outside of finance. That when I think about a decision we're making, I think, well, how is that salesperson going to interpret what we just said? Can we say it in a different way, or can we ask for their input and advice before saying it? All of that dynamic when you're in any kind of business role, understanding your stakeholder base and your impact on others is very important.
You said earlier that airlines was just a tough business, and we hear that all the time. Do you look back now, and again, everything's worked out rather well, but do you ever wonder, why did I stay all those years? I mean, do you ever think about what kept you there?
Oh, the people, for sure. No, I loved it. I still have a passion for the industry, and as you point out, it's such a challenging business. I had utmost admiration for everybody still in it from all sides. I mean, it's sort of interesting because as soon as something goes wrong, whether it's the weather, whether it's the economy or something, airlines are always impacted, and it's always very visible when you put a foot wrong. And many times you see them at the wrong end of that spectrum, and that's the challenge. But that's also the opportunity, right? So you're always wanting to make it better.
And you explained to us how the move into sales at Apple was really just a pivot of sorts for you. But again, though, what happened? Why did you? That's a risk. That was a bona fide risk. Of all your career rungs, that's the one that's most memorable, and everything worked out the way one would imagine you hope. But what was going through your mind at the time when you finally decided to leave United as CFO?
Yeah, well, Tim's a good salesperson. No, it's such a great company, and it was. Yeah, I mean, I think in life there's so many things you do, and I remember making the decision. I thought every decision I've made thus far has been a little bit easier because it's sort of like, you go a few degrees left, a few degrees right, and then this one was clearly a big step. But I wanted to challenge myself, and I thought, let me get uncomfortable. Everyone talks about, hey, get uncomfortable in your career and then see what happens. And I thought, well, this is really doing it maybe on a bigger scale than I needed. But that was the opportunity, and an opportunity to learn and continuously just learn and challenge yourself. And again, I love technology. I love Apple. I thought they, it's such an incredible company, and just to be a part of that, even for one chapter in my life, was really special.
You had already been exposed to sales, clearly in the airline industries as well. But I mean, is there something that you registered with you finally about sales? Something that perhaps you hadn't realized prior? Or?
No, it's a great question. Not specifically. I thought it was more the opportunity. It was still very analytic, and there were elements of it that I thought were very interesting and challenging. So it wasn't sales in particular, but it was more about, working with people that you thought you could learn something from, and with a product that was just incredible. And again, it was about change. I mean, what Apple can do for, the world and changing the world. I thought that was very compelling. I love being part of an organization that means more than just what it is, and to be with people that clearly have a vision for change and a vision for doing good. And to be a part of that, I thought was exceptional. And the experience I'd had in the airlines in so many different capacities actually helped with that, because I thought, well, I've done operations, I did some marketing areas and other things, and now add sales to it. It's just sort of complementing that.
Zane, we always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side. We're wondering if there's something many people don't know about you. People who've known you for years might not know. Anything?
No, I'm terrible at this, and I feel like every time I say something that I feel like, everyone already knows this. I love the outdoors. I tell everyone I enjoy kite surfing, which I hardly get a chance to do that, but I do enjoy getting out, being close to the water. Big F1 fan, so I enjoy that as well. But other than that, I think everybody knows everything.
What about a book selection for us? Anything?
It's funny you should mention that. I've been trying to balance my life with other things, and I read a bunch of books on, and I'm, by the way, a terrible cook, but I read a bunch of books on chefs, and because I'm always intrigued on something completely different when you read. You spend so much time reading about business this and business that, and the better way to manage, the better way to do this. So, and now I've gone from chefs to some of the areas of nutrition and longevity. So there's a book out there called Outlive, which I say books, but candidly, most of them are on Audible. But I love learning a little bit more about how to, treat your body better. And we're all in sort of stressful roles, and no matter where you are in your life, there's always something that you're trying to balance or navigate. And I feel like understanding more of that and what it's doing to you personally is important. And there's so much really interesting research going on now for all of us to benefit from, just to actually live a better life.
Not just diet, but social aspects of living long as well. Yeah.
Sleep, too, for a big one that all of us do poorly on.
Well, we're up to our final question, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. We're wondering what your priorities are for the coming 12 months as CFO of Workday. What would those be?
I think for us, we have such a great opportunity ahead with our customers, with growing around the world, and how we can execute what I think is just our opportunity. I mean, we've got so much momentum, and you'll see it here at Rising, with an enthusiastic customer base, with great technology. What we can do for companies around the world, I think, is exciting. As a CFO, how do I ensure that we're investing in the right areas and driving some of that change that everybody really wants in their everyday? And that's one of the benefits of AI. I mean, it's actually going to make all of our lives sort of that much better. And how do we take that opportunity and leverage that? And that's what I'll be a small part of driving for the next year.
Zane Rowe, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here. Appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. Jack here. Hope you've been enjoying our recent episodes of CFO Thought Leader. Please know that I don't take for granted this opportunity to serve you. Your time is valuable, and of course, so is the time of our CFO guests. I'll admit to you, on certain weeks, I will pinch myself and say, hey, I get to do this for a living. I speak to all these impressive leaders. Undoubtedly, there are more aggressive interviewers out there, some who leave no stone unturned. But our swim lane is for finance leaders only. And those finance leaders have a unique style of leadership, one that is rooted in the burden of trust. In light of this, finance leaders must take great care not to forfeit this trust as they step into the role of being a more expressive leader. And that is what CFO Thought Leader is really about. That's why I try to remind myself week in, week out, how fortunate I am. Still, I need your help. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Email me your comments at jack@cfothoughtleader.com. And please visit cfothoughtleader.com. You'll find a listener survey right on the nav bar. As always, thank you for listening.